Hi and welcome back to Learn Python by doing number 15. So we have learned a lot about decorators. Now it's time to explore some built-in decorators that Python can offer to you. So we're going to start with the property decorator. So what does this property decorator do? Well, it helps us to define setters and getters for classes in a convenient way. So let's create a class called person. Let's create a constructor which is going to take the self age and it's going to say self.age is equal to age. And let's build this category method, which is going to be very easy. It's going to say if age is less than 13, then it's going to return kid. If age, self.age is less than 13, if self.age is greater than or equal to 13 and self.age is less than 18, then you are 18. If you are greater than or equal to 18 and less than 65, then you are probably an adult, and else return elderly. Okay, so that's a very simple class. And now let's create an object out of this class. So person is equal to person 25. So if we call the category method, it's going to return adult. Okay, we can modify these variables directly. The age variable, we can say 13. We can access this variable also directly. It's going to return 13, and we can also call again the category method, and it's going to return teen. Okay, so suppose you are the person who is in charge of implementing this class. So this class is part of a huge code base because you and your team are building a huge application, and this is just part of that code. So someone in other part of the code is using your class and do something like this. Person.age is equal to -5. You can access the variable directly. It's -5, and you can call the category method, and it's going to return kid. So this is a very unfortunate case because, negative values, age cannot be a negative values, and this doesn't make sense at all. So you have to validate that the age must be greater than or equal to 0, and then you can set the value to whatever number you pass it. You can also, for example, validate that it is an integer instead of a float, so something like that. Okay, so this is one of the things that bothered me a lot when learning Python, because look at that, you can modify this variable directly, you can access to its value directly, and as a guy who learned programming with C++, then this is very something that is bothering me a lot. Why? Because in C++ we had these keywords where we could specify for the age to be private or public, so something like this. But in Python, we don't have something like this in Python, but we can still replicate that behavior using the property decorator that we're going to see in a moment. Okay, so let's remove all of these things. And now let's modify our class a little bit. So first, we are going to modify the constructor, and we're going to define this getAge function, which is going to print this message getting the age. So it's clear whenever we call this method, and this is going to return self._age. Okay, so why did I bother to put this underscore before the name of the variable? This is a convention. It's simply a convention to tell that this needs to be a private variable. So it's just convention. It doesn't do anything else. It doesn't do anything magic. It's just telling other people that see your code that this is a private variable and shouldn't be touched unless you use setters and getters. And remember, setters and getters, well, as the name suggests, they get the value or set the value. Okay? So this is just convention. You have to be very clear in that. It doesn't do anything magic. Now we have to set the age, and it's going to receive self and age as parameters. And first we're going to say if age is less than 0, then print the message we cannot have negative ages. Else we're going to print the message setting the age and saying self dot underscore age is equal to whatever value you pass it. And now every time you call the constructor, you have to call the set age method. So you have to do something like this. So now let's create an instance or an object of this class. So let's pass 25. So as you can see, whenever you create a new object of this class, you are calling the setAge method. So that's why we are here. Now we are here. Age is greater than or equal to 0. So we reach this else condition here. It prints this message and sets this underscore age variable to 25. So we can get the age like this. And now it's 25. Let's change the age to 13. Get age, it's 13, so it's working correctly. But if we try to, for example, call the category method, we're going to get an error. So let's see the error. So it's attribute error. Person object has no attribute age because now it's not called age, it's called underscore age. So we have to do this in every self.age we had. So now it's going to work. So let's see. Now it's printing category teen for 13. Okay, so there are two problems with this implementation. The first problem is that we can still access the underscore age value or variable directly. We can still modify it. So we can do something like -5 and we don't get any error if we do something like that. So that's why I told you that when I started learning Python and I encountered this, I said, well, so what's the reason for the get age and set age then? They have no reason to exist because we can still do something like this. The underscore, as I told you, is not doing anything special. It's just saying to other people, this is a private variable, don't touch it. But if you are a rebel and you want to touch it, then you can still do it. So it didn't make sense to me coming from C++. But then I learned about the property decorator, and then it made more sense to me. This is the first problem. The second problem with this implementation is that then you're telling other people, well, you have to set the age with this set age method, and if you want to get the age, you have to call this get age method. Before this, they were doing something like this. Remember, person.age equal to 13, and they were retrieving the value by simply calling person.age. And now you're telling those people, no, that's not like that anymore. You have to call the set age and the get age. So maybe those people are going to get upset because maybe they assumed that you already created those age variables with the property, but in fact you didn't. So you have to modify your code somehow to be coherent and make it call or set the age like you did before. Otherwise, those people may get mad, and because they need to refactor their code to set the age with this method and to get the age with this method, and they don't want to do that. Okay, so that's where properties come in handy. So let's delete all of these things. And now let's return to the original version of our class. So remember, we had self.age equal to age. This is going to be untouched. And here we're going to go back to the original version of this method. Okay, so now we're going to say age is property. So remember, decorators are wrapper functions, and in fact they can get more than one function. So the first function is going to be the getter, and the second function is going to be the set age, so the setter. And now let's see what happens if we create an instance or an object of this class. So as you can see, it's printing the message setting the age. Okay, but why did this happen if in the constructor we are not calling the set age method? It gets called automatically every time you want to set the value of age. So for example, if we try to do something like that and now specify 13, now it's calling first the set age method. So it's passing through this method first in order to set the age value. If we try to do something crazy like -5 or -4, sorry, it says we cannot have negative ages. So it's passing through the set age method first before setting the value of age. So we no longer need to do something like set age because we can do it directly like we did in the first example. And let's see what happens if we try to access the value. Then it's printing a message getting the age. So you are passing through this getAge method first. So that's what the property decorator does. And let's see also if the category method is working. So it's working, but it's printing getting the age 3 times. So why is this happening? It's because first we are calling getAge when we declare something like this. Self.age is calling getAge, so it's printing getting the age, but our age is not less than 13. So we go to the second condition and we call self.age again. Self.age, well, we call it here 2 times, plus this time, then we're calling it 3 times, because here we're returning, so we're not reaching these conditions here. So we are executing self.age or getting the value of age 3 times, so that's why this message is printed 3 times. So you can delete that message if you don't want to see that message coming up 3 times, but it's clear how it's getting the message, or the age, sorry. Okay, so that's very, very useful. But personally, I like how this is defined, age equal property, and then we pass the functions. But there is a syntactic sugar for doing this same thing. So people that use Python don't like to write getters and setters, so they don't like to define methods like getAge or setAge. They just want to write age. So here they just want to write age and age. So above the getter, we have to specify here the property decorator. And here we can say age.setter. So here we're telling this, take this as the setter, and this is going to do the same thing. So let's see. The code is unchanged. So people prefer to do it like that. I prefer to do it like the manual way and defining the getters and setters because, it makes me remember to C++, but that's okay. We're learning Python, so do it like this. It's better. And well, one last thing I want to tell you is that we can also specify two more things. Apart from getters and setters, we can specify deleters, if you want to call it like that, and doc, which is again documentation for the property. Okay, so that's everything I wanted to tell you in this video. I hope you learned a lot. So this is getting real advanced, but it's for you to know more Python and get to a senior developer position if possible. Okay, so see you in the next video.